I can't believe this. That's 8K raw. That's over 2 hours. Oh my. Who needs overheating? How about this? Unlimited recording on the Canon R5 in 4K HQ, and you got it. Let's throw an 8K too while we're at it. Let's go ahead and take a little bit of time to figure out how we can do this and what it means for you and your R5. Okay, so about a week or so ago, I did a video about my real-world experiences of dealing with the Canon R5 and overheating after about 8 months of continuous use. And I'll be honest, I got an incredible amount of response and interest in that video. You kind of blew me away. And the thing that really surprised me was how many of you had so many different questions about 4K HQ and overheating on the Canon R5. Now, if you want to see my results of the first test, I'll put a link up here in case you're interested in it. And I will say this just in case you want to know my verdict on recording in 4K 24 frames a second on the Canon R5. If you want unlimited, reliable, consistent 4K recording in the Canon R5, standard 4K will get that for you. You can record forever in it. It will not overheat. It will not give you any problems whatsoever. And while standard 4K on the R5 is not as crisp and sharp, I think, as 4K HQ, I'll be honest, once you have motion blur, color correction, maybe add a little sharpening in post, it still looks really great. I've never had a client be able to complain or tell a difference in it. And so I think it's a very good viable option if you want good 4K footage from the Canon R5. Now that being said, you're here about 4K HQ, and I discovered something today that blew my mind as far as what I think the culprit is of overheating in the Canon R5, and I can't wait to show you these results. Now, one note before I get started. It's just a kind of a nice note. Now guys, please be aware that I am doing this. I am a tiny little minuscule YouTube channel. I'm not even able to monetize my channel yet because I don't even have 1,000 subscribers. So if you want to subscribe and help me, that would be awesome. But please remember, don't send me nasty comments. I'm really not trying to do this to make any of you mad. I promise. This is literally me. I am a full-time professional filmmaker who is doing these tests, and I thought it would be cool to share this with you in the world. So don't take it personally when I'm talking about overheating in the Canon R5. I really want to do this to share with you because I think a lot of you would benefit, and I think some of you are going to find this really cool, some of the things that I discovered. Okay, now one of the first things people did ask me questions about was about the Canon R5, and they told me, hey Bryan, you're crazy. All your camera tests, the back LCD was closed. That makes all the difference in the world. If you just open the back LCD and move it away from the camera, you'll get huge differences. Well, that's never occurred to me in real life, but I decided to do some tests just to show you the difference. So if you look here, what I have is a test. And it's the exact same thing, except that you can see on the left, the LCD is closed, and on the right, it is open. And if you look here, the recording times was almost identical. I got overheating times at 43:21 and 44:10. That is less than a minute of difference between these two tests. That for me tells me if you were out there shooting in the field, and if you think opening your LCD screen is gonna make any difference in overheating on the Canon R5, especially in 4K HQ, these tests, in my opinion, show me what I've already known. It doesn't really make any bit of difference. Now, that being said, I did want to look at one more test and show you one more test that I got before I get into the mind-blowing things, and that was this. A lot of people said, Bryan, what about dummy batteries, right? Maybe there's all this heat coming from the internal battery in the Canon R5. What happens if you use a dummy battery? Well, let's tell you what happened. I use V-mounts quite often when I'm doing interviews with a dummy battery. So let's take a look at the Canon R5 and see what happens if we do a dummy battery. Okay, and so here it is with a dummy battery. And as you can see, yes, we did get extended time here with the dummy battery. So I got up to 53 minutes and 8 seconds with this dummy battery. And you know, that was good. I was happier with that, but I'll be honest, one of the things about this is that's only on average about 9 minutes or so more than I was getting with the battery in place. And this just wasn't working for me. I mean, why would I go through all this trouble of putting up these dummy batteries if it's only getting me 9 more minutes? When I'm out in the field, 9 minutes is not a practical difference that's gonna make any dramatic effect. I need these things on for well over an hour. I need an hour and a half to 2 hours of this thing being on that I can rely on. And right now, nothing I was doing with the Canon R5 was getting me what I reliably need in 4K HQ to rely on. But then I had a revelation. To do these tests, I was relying on the fact that I shoot with the LCD screens on throughout my shooting period. And I would keep these LCD screens on because I use the LCD screens for information on autofocus, just general information about my camera in general. I like having that information on. But I noticed something. I was getting slightly better times when my screens would cut off and have a minute off while it was still recording out the HDMI out. So what I did is I decided to do a test where I cut all the screens off of my camera. Now, I want you to take a look at this because this is what I would consider very, very interesting if you are a 4K HQ shooter. Take a look at this in the computer. Okay, so here I am. Exact same thing, same dummy battery. Remember, last time I did the dummy battery, it cut down after 53 minutes. But this time I made a big difference. I allowed my EVF and the LCD on the back of my computer to shut down after 3 minutes and 5 minutes, respectively. And what I noticed was an incredible difference. Here you go, we have the same test. We're getting up to about 40-some minutes, which is where the failures usually happen. But look at this. I'm coming up on 53 minutes. I'm good to go. I'm breaking the hour mark. At this point, I was really, really excited breaking the hour mark. And what is incredible is I just let it run. And to my amazement, I actually outlasted the time-lapse camera that I was recording this with. You'll see it here in a minute. There you go, I had to switch. I ran my time-lapse camera. I had to switch the card there. It's still going. I'm running out of battery on my stopper. 2 hours. 2 hours of record time. Absolutely incredible. I just kept letting it going. It was cranking. It was cranking 2.5 hours. 4K HQ, all recording externally here to my Atomos Ninja V. And then essentially, I got to 3 hours and decided that that proved everything I needed to go. 3 hours of continuous recording in 4K HQ, and you can see right here, it did not overheat, it never shut down, it kept running non-stop. This was just so unexpected, I was completely blown away. I thought the overheating from this camera was coming from the CF Express card, maybe the battery, but you can see here clearly, it's actually coming from the LCD and the EVF in there. Now, as amazing as I found this, I decided to do one other set of tests because I know I could get this with a dummy battery, but what would happen if I decided to do the same test, cutting off the EVF and the LCD, but I used the internal battery? Let's go take a look and see what happened there. Okay, so here we are, internal battery, same thing. I cut the EVF off after 3 minutes, the back screen, the LCD off at 5 minutes. And once again, I got an incredible amount of record time. To be honest, if you look at this, I couldn't overheat the camera again. I have the new LPE6 batteries for the Canon R5. And if you look here, an hour and a half, still going strong. I actually outlasted the battery of my Canon R5. If you look here at an hour and 56 minutes and 8 seconds, just shy of 2 hours of time, I wore out the battery of the Canon R5. I didn't overheat the Canon R5, I literally wore the battery out. This is with an internal battery, 2 hours of recording, straight recording, 4K HQ in the Canon R5. All right, I decided to do one more test to see, maybe the CF Express card in there, I've had times with that, with having a CF card, it would overheat. Well, let's see what happened when I did that. So here we go, we have the Canon R5, I have a CF Express card in the camera, which I had thought having that CF Express card, even if you're not recording, was a source of the heat problems. And once again, we blew right past the recording limits, and this is a second instance where I literally recorded for well over an hour and a half and basically outlived the lifespan of the battery. Look at that, 1.5 hours, 1 hour and 40 minutes. And look at that. And there you go, at 1 hour and 49 minutes, once again, we ran out the battery of the camera. Now, what's incredible about all these things, even the 3-hour test that I did, the reason why I cut my camera test off at 3 hours is I kind of figured if you need to record more than 3 hours of anything straight with the Canon R5 and 4K HQ, you probably should get a different camera because that's really not even what it's made for. But also, I was using a brick V-mount battery and almost worn out my brick V-mount in 3 hours of time. And then I did 2 tests with internal batteries, and in both times, I couldn't overheat the Canon R5. I actually went through the battery before the Canon R5 overheated. So this is absolutely an incredible, incredible piece of news that lets you know if you are someone that's just adamant on shooting with the 4K HQ, you can have a way to shoot with that in an unlimited capacity as long as you follow these techniques of cutting off the screen as you shoot. So it looks like the overheat culprit in the Canon R5, in case those of you are wondering, it's not the battery, it's not the CF cards, it is actually a combination of the EVF and the LCD screen that are what will cause you to have overheating issues in the Canon R5. If you cut off the LCD and you cut off the EVF, you can essentially record unlimited times with the Canon R5. And this is an absolutely incredible discovery. It's something that I find really useful and nice to know. Now, there's one other thing that I would like to point out with this, and I'm gonna go back to my 3-hour test. I tested 3 hours, the camera just kept on going, but let me point out one quick thing for you, and that is this. What happens after 3 hours if I put the LCD back on? And as you can see here, I got exactly 3 minutes of recording after that 3-hour period. So what that shows me is the second you cut on that EVF and that LCD, your camera's on the verge to overheating. So if you're gonna record like this, keep the EVF and the LCD off as you shoot. Okay, so now that we've done all that stuff with the 4K HQ, which was absolutely, completely mind-blowing in my opinion, I know the inevitable question is going to follow up from all of you out there. Bryan, what about 8K? Can this prove true to 8K on the Canon R5 the same way it does for the oversampled 4K HQ? So, I decided to put this thing to a test. Now, let's go ahead and just crank this all the way up to 11. We're gonna do 8K RAW out the HDMI, and let's see how fast this puppy overheats. Let's go check it out. Okay, so here we are, and once again, this is the exact same test as what we did with the 4K HQ. I have the LCD and the EVF set to tune out right pretty much within 3 to 5 minutes as I start. And as you can see, this puppy just cranks along and cranks along. Now, I have a Ninja Adamus 5 on top of my R5, and I cannot record 8K with this. That being said, if you are someone that gets an R5 and gets a Ninja Adamus 5 Pro that has just been announced, you can record 8K. And this is spectacular because look at this, guys. You can get up to 3 hours of recording if you have an Adamus Ninja Pro V or 5 on a Canon R5. And this is really amazing because I think this really unlocks this camera in a lot of ways, just knowing that you do have an ability to go ahead and get 8K footage for over 3 hours. I am just completely blown away. I never thought there'd be any test ever that would let me record for over 3 hours of 8K footage from a Canon R5, and we just did it, and I am bam, blown away. I'm just so excited. It's really, really awesome to see. I have done lots and lots of camera tests over the years as a cinematographer. I gotta be honest, this is probably one of the most surprising results I've ever gotten from a camera test. I have done the dummy batteries, I've done pulling the LCDs out. None of those ever made a difference in the Canon R5, and I was just shocked to see 3 hours of continuous record time with the Canon R5 in 4K HQ. I did not think that was honestly possible on my camera, just with my experience, and I was just really blown away with that. Now, there are some caveats to this that you need to know. First off, this is a really interesting way to go about this. Now, you don't have to mod your camera to do this, but you can't use that back screen or the EVF on your camera, and that really limits where you can do this unlimited record time. You can't be doing B-roll on set and doing this. This is really a situation that I see if you are using, say, interviews, right? You can set up your interview, get your composition done, start the recording, and just let the screens cut off during the interview, use your Atomos to monitor, and then you know you're getting the best quality 4K HQ on your camera, which makes the Canon R5 a great B cam for something like the Canon C300 or something like that. But just remember, even though you can get this unlimited roll time, it is very, very select in how you do it. You can get it in certain situations and not others. So just word to the wise to know about that. But this is really, really useful for interviews and maybe certain situations where you can just allow the camera to just be and breathe. But if you're a person that's interacting with the camera and doing this a lot, it's not very useful. The other thing is, when you have this on there, you lose all that information that's on the camera that you can't see through an external monitor, namely the autofocus. Now, the autofocus on the R5 is good enough. You can kind of rely on it, but that is something to know. You need to be aware about that. Anything with Canon is when you get down to it, there are always caveats, right? But I wanted to make this video to let you all know that this information existed, that there is a way to shoot unlimited 4K HQ, and you can do it if you're willing to make these kind of sacrifices and you're in a situation that this works for you. There's also one other note that I did notice about this. I did have a couple of photographers tell me that they have had overheat warnings come on them as wedding photographers on long days. If you are a photographer, I think your overheat warning may be coming on from the camera's LCD being on the back through these long shoot days. So that may be something to go. You can do a button to basically disable that LCD while you're shooting. That could help you out if you are a photographer as well. Anyway, guys, I hope that helped. Please leave me any comments. Please be nice. Don't say anything too mean to me. But, this is just one of those things. I think if you can get this in your toolkit, it's a tool that helps you maximize this R5 even more than it already is. And I really hope that was helpful. So yeah, guys, go out there, keep on shooting. Yeah, and I'll talk to you soon.